RBI yesterday had increased risk weights on unsecured loans for both banks and NBFCs. I think what was more surprising for the street was the fact that they have increased risk weights for the lending by banks to NBFCs as well. Now, I think even if we look at how the banking pack is doing this morning, it opened gap down. Nifty bank is below 44,000 mark. So all in all, a very big negative news flow for the banking pack, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that markets will look at how this actually plays out, because this is more from the unsecured lending perspective for the NBFC. So that would have an impact, and that's what we are seeing. Even if you look at the benchmark Nifty, it did open with a down gap, but there was a pullback which has happened. And if we look at Bank Nifty anyways wasn't as strong, because if we go back and look at the charts for quite many days, so Nifty is trading at its recent highs, means the highs that it had made last week and currently also, and this week also. But Bank Nifty has been trading over the last few trading sessions. So that clearly tells me that there is some concern, and also what it tells me is that it would be more stock specific. There would be some stocks that might be impacted, but how much is the impact going to be? That's one thing that we'll have to look out for. Because if you look in the banking space today, we see that there's some correction in IDFC, with some then Axis, SBI, and all that. We're seeing some sort of minor correction, but overall there's not much of a reaction, because if you look at IndusInd, Kotak, so they are there in green, and some of the banks are marginally in the red. So we'll have to watch out as to how this plays out for these banks, and primarily for the NBFCs on the non-secured part. As far as Bank Nifty is concerned, I would say Bank Nifty has been, I think, taking this into stride, because that's what being reflected on the charts per se. And on the upside, the recent highs that Bank Nifty had made, so somewhere around 44,400. So that was made on 15th November. So that's a zone of resistance for Bank Nifty on the upside. So that's a level to watch out for. Once it takes that out, then we can say that more of the news flows and all that, which has really come off recently, that's more or less been factored.
Now, RBI's directive aside, between the PSU banking space and the private banking space, at this point in time, what do you prefer? Because we are seeing once again a pickup in the private banking pack, and you, along with other experts, have indicated that valuations are looking perhaps attractive.
Yeah, I would say if you look at the private banking space, then in that case, we are seeing Axis is more or less now consolidating. So there's a loss of a trend there. And if I look at other private sector banks, so HDFC Bank, what we are seeing is that it's more or less now trying to form a bottom. So it's not yet formed a bottom. So that's a level for HDFC, somewhere around, I would say, any correction towards, because currently it's around 1500 odd levels. So any further correction in HDFC, that could be a buying opportunity. So maybe a 2-3% correction in HDFC can be looked as an opportunity. Apart from that, ICICI is now seeming to have formed a bottom. So because it has got very strong support coming on the 900 levels, currently it's around 934 odd levels. It has been consolidating for quite some time. So once it starts, ICICI starts sustaining above the 950 mark, then we could expect an upside towards the 1000 mark. So this is one on the private sector that we can look at. Apart from that, IDFC, what we are seeing, IDFC First Bank, we saw a significant rally. Now it's in a more or less a consolidation phase. So we could witness some choppy trading sessions here between, I would say, 90, 92 on the upside and 80 on the downside. So any correction in the stock towards 80 odd levels, 78, 80 odd levels could be a good buying opportunity from a short-term perspective as well.
Mr. Deo, any view on Yes Bank? I mean, the stock has rallied by about 30% in November alone. I think one of the reasons why it rallied was that, it has received 120 crore from the NPA portfolio of JC Flower. But I mean, the kind of exuberance that we are seeing, do you expect the stock to perhaps break out of those shackles of around 20 to 24 rupees that we have seen in the last 2-3 years?
See, if you look at the Yes Bank, actually, we don't track Yes Bank either from a fundamental or a technical perspective. But since you asked the question, I'll answer that. What we see in Yes Bank is that you rightly said that 20, because if you go back in time, so somewhere in December 22, it had made a high of 24.75. And from there, it had corrected all the way to 14, and it was trading around 14 odd levels, and now it's back at 20. So if you ask me purely from a technical perspective, the bank seems to have formed a very strong bottom on the downside. And also what we are seeing is the last few couple of weeks, I would say 2 weeks to be precise, there's an increase in volumes as well. So that reflects that there is some definite buying interest which is coming into the stock. But as I said earlier, 24, 25, that's going to be a level for stiff resistance for the stock. So one needs to be before trading in the stock, one needs to be slightly clear as to there could be risks associated in terms of volatility, because it could be more of news driven as well. So that's one thing one needs to keep into account. But as I said, technically 24, 25 is a zone of resistance for the stock.